Please. Good evening. My name is Tracy Craig, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. This meeting is being hosted by Alameda County Department of Environmental Health and is being held to present the draft cleanup plan called a corrective action plan for the Automasters site located at 6200 Shattuck Avenue in Oakland. Purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide our attendees with an overview of environmental investigations that have been conducted at the site and the proposed plan to address contamination, and most importantly, to answer questions that you may have and to accept public comments. Important to note that tonight's meeting is focused on work that will address impacts from petroleum, so gas, contamination related to former underground tanks to protect public health and the environment. If the site is redeveloped, and I believe there aren't any plans right now to redevelop the property, further evaluation will be required to support any redevelopment plans. Let's see, we are in the middle of a public comment period right now, which runs from, I believe, June 15th to July 15th, 2023. You should have received a fact sheet in the mail that explained the project and how to provide, and provided the public comment period dates, as well as how to provide public comments. We'll also go through that at tonight's meeting. At the end of this meeting, we will be accepting your public comments, and you can also email or mail them in, and we have our last slide explains exactly how to do that. Important to note, tonight's meeting is a Zoom webinar, which means our attendees, you don't have audio or video feed. If you have a question or a comment, you can raise your virtual hand, or you can type it in the question and answer box. If you want, we can also promote you to panelists and we can see you. So if that's an option and you'd like us to do that, please just let us know in the comment box and we can go ahead and do that. Also important to note, this meeting is being recorded tonight and will be uploaded to YouTube. So if any of your neighbors or anybody that wasn't able to attend wants to see it, we'll be providing the link. To get that link, you can go ahead and type your email or phone number into the question and answer box, and we will follow up with that link with you tomorrow. It will also be uploaded on GeoTracker, which is the Water Board's website, and we have that information again at the end of the meeting. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists and go through the agenda. So first, I'd like to introduce everybody that's here. So first, we have Dylan Rowe, who is the Chief of Land and Water with Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. Dylan, can you raise your hand?
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening. Next, we have Paresh Khatri, and he is a local oversight program manager with Alameda County. Paresh, you want to raise your hand? And then we have Noel Liner, and Noel is the case manager, so that means he's managing the day-to-day aspects of this case. We also have Johnny Browning, who probably most people know, site owner. We have Bruce Jacobson with Weston Associates, that would be Johnny's environmental consultant. And then me, Tracy, moderating this, and then John Permani works with me, and he's doing all the stuff behind the scenes to make this work. And finally, I'm sorry, I probably should have introduced you sooner. We have Patrick Bears, who's a deputy city attorney with the city of Oakland. Did I get your title right?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Okay. So here's our agenda. I think everybody can probably read it. We'll be going through a short overview of the site, discussing the cleanup plan, which we call a corrective action implementation plan, discussing community protection measures, so engineering methodologies that will be taken to make sure that we mitigate off-site impacts to the greatest extent possible, talking about communications with the community, when you can actually expect to see work going on out there, and then most importantly, answering any questions you have and getting any public input during that public comment period that you might have on this plan. And important to note, this is a draft plan, which means that your input is important to us. We'll be considering all the input that is received before Alameda County makes a decision on the cleanup plan. Okay, next slide, Jen. So I think probably everybody knows where the site's located. It's right there between Shattuck Avenue and 62nd Street. Currently vacant, has some RVs and other things parked on it. Next slide, John. Really quickly, I'd just like to go over a site overview. Again, tonight's work is focused on impacts from petroleum contamination from underground storage tanks, and that work is that cleanup work or proposed cleanup work is being done to protect public health and the environment. If the site is redeveloped and there are not currently plans for redevelopment, further evaluation and potentially more environmental cleanup might be needed. But tonight we're just focusing on petroleum contamination. So site was a former gas station. If you lived in the area, you might remember that, and also a repair facility. There were a couple underground storage tanks, so those big metal tanks under the ground. And there was also fuel dispensing equipment, so what you pump gas with, and that was removed in 1986. Contamination, so petroleum contamination has been found in soil and then also in groundwater, and that's related to the underground storage tank. And then the property owner is cleaning up the petroleum contamination to make sure that it meets the State Water Board's low threat underground storage tank case closure policy. Wow, that is a mouthful. Cleaning it up under the underground storage tank to make sure that it's protective of groundwater in the future. And then Alameda County actually provides oversight of the environmental activities. And that would be, again, Dylan Rowe, who's the chief, that's her department, and the buck stops with her. So next slide, John. And I think this is where I'm going to hand it over to Dylan. At the end, I'll come back and talk about how you can provide public comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Good evening, everyone. So this leaking underground storage tank case was opened quite some time ago. In 1986, when the USTs were pulled and release was discovered. And since that time, basically from 2006 to 2023, there have been multiple investigations kind of over time, sporadically, with a lot more emphasis in the last few years, to assess the impacts to soil and groundwater and evaluate the site for closure under the criteria of the low threat closure policy that Tracy mentioned. The site is currently developed as an auto repair facility, and therefore the criteria that are used to evaluate cleanup goals are commercial levels for on-site uses. Any contamination that goes off-site, the screening levels that are used are residential, because it is in a residential neighborhood. And those screening levels are used, they give you a benchmark for levels that potentially can cause a human health risk to construction workers or utility workers, or risk to occupants of buildings from contamination in the soil. The unmet criteria, so there's a lot of different criteria in the low threat closure policy that the state adopted, and there are 8 what are called general criteria and 3 media specific criteria. The only criteria at this moment that is not met is the removal of secondary source to the extent practicable, and secondary source is defined as the petroleum contamination that is in the vicinity of the USD infrastructure. And you can see a red box on this figure that shows where the bulk of the contamination is, and we're going to talk about cleanup of that in a minute. But this figure also, I know it's small, but in the documents in the case file on this GeoTracker website, you can look at figures like this, but the figures show the locations of borings that have been advanced and monitoring wells that have been installed to evaluate soil and groundwater conditions at the site. As Tracy said, the leaking underground storage tank case is specific to petroleum releases from underground storage tanks, and is not looking at other potential releases related to historical land use at this site. Next slide. So groundwater contamination, there is groundwater contamination, but it seems to be very confined. The extent of the plume is defined by a network of groundwater monitoring wells. And there are 3 on-site wells and there are 2 off-site wells. One of the wells is located in 62nd Street, and one of the wells is located in Shattuck. And those 2 offsite wells are located down gradient, so that in the direction that groundwater flows. And those wells show that the plume does not extend to those areas. Those are have all been sampled repeatedly, and the concentrations of volatile organic compounds in groundwater has been non-detect at levels that are considered not risk to human health. And the plume itself kind of is centered. The biggest impacts in the groundwater are right near the former USTs. And the plume itself is less than 100 feet long. So it meets, there's different criteria that we evaluate that the state has come up with, and it meets the criteria for a plume that is less than 100 feet. So that piece has been checked off. Next slide, please. So we talked about the unmet criteria being removal of secondary source. And this figure, we're going to look at this figure now. We're going to look at it again later. This figure shows the extent of the excavation that's going to be that is planned to take place this year to remove the residual petroleum contamination in soil. And it's the outline of it is all those wonderful shady colors. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the phasing of this and this excavation. But this is the unmet criteria, and after excavation of this material, we expect to go to closure for this site. Next figure, next slide. We talked about this a little bit. Alameda County is the lead agency for the oversight of the cleanup and investigation of the site. We actually are co-regulating this particular site with the State Water Board's expedited cleanup account program staff. This case entered into that program a couple years ago with the intent of kind of pooling resources and expertise and looking at things to move this case into remediation and get it approved and get the cleanup. This case has been around for a long time, and I know that you all know that, and it is time to get it to the end game here. So Alameda County still is the lead agency, but there are other players. The team that will be working on implementing the cleanup is the general contractor, who is hired by the responsible party, Johnny Browning, and his environmental consultant, Weston Associates. And then there are other regulatory oversight agencies. The City of Oakland, they are responsible for traffic control and traffic plans, also dust and stormwater management. And Bay Area Air Quality Management District is also responsible for regulating dust. Alameda County Environmental Health, since this is a cleanup case, we are going to pay a lot of attention to dust and anything that leaves this site, and will coordinate as we need to. But ultimately, those two agencies are the responsible people for implementing their regulations. Next slide. So the corrective action plan, which is this remedial soil excavation, there's a document called the Corrective Action Implementation Plan. It is in the case file on the GeoTracker website. If you do not have a link to that website, we can provide it to you. It has all the documents of all the investigations that have been conducted at the site. This particular document is the one that is out for public comment, and it summarizes all the investigation findings conducted through 2021. There's been a little bit of more data collection in the last year or two related to groundwater, and those are included in separate reports. But the corrective action plan proposes excavation of contaminated soil in that area, and we'll go back and look at that some more, and includes plans on how to manage groundwater, traffic, dust, diesel emissions, and odor during remediation. And it also requires soil vapor sampling after excavation of the soil, just to verify the the soil vapor conditions on site. Soil vapor has not been evaluated to date because the contamination resides in an area that is covered by a parking lot. So there's not a vapor intrusion risk to a building. However, once the excavation is completed, we are going to require vapor samples to be collected just to confirm, and it helps us understand the effectiveness of the soil excavation.
And Dylan, I'm going to ask you actually just to stop and explain what vapor intrusion is, because
Okay.
we know, but I think
Yep.
it's
Fair enough.
thanks.
So you all go to gas stations and you smell that lovely stuff in a gas station. Those are volatile organic compounds. That's what they're called. And gasoline contains a lot of different, it's a mixture of a lot of different kinds of volatile organic compounds. And so those chemicals, when they are in soil or in groundwater, vaporize just like they do at a gas station into air, and they make their way up through the soil. And then they can actually find ways into buildings, and that's called vapor intrusion. And there are certain levels of contaminants that you do not want to see in indoor air. You want to see contamination below those levels. In this area where we live in Berkeley and Oakland, there's a lot of sources of indoor air contaminants that are not necessarily from the ground. There is, there's air pollution, there's off-gassing of furniture in your house, there's the dry cleaning that you bring into your house. There's all kinds of sources of chemicals, but we want to make sure that the chemicals in the ground are not making their way into indoor air.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay. And so this corrective action implementation plan, we invite you to review it, and if you have comments, we request that you send them written comments to us so that we can address them, and the fact sheet has the information on how to do that. If you don't know about that, you can ask Tracy and John, and they can give you that information. Next slide. So the excavation is basically going to be excavating soil in those colored areas that we're going to come back to in a minute to a depth of 13 feet. And during the excavation, groundwater is likely to be encountered, and it will be pumped into containers where it will be characterized and then disposed of at an off-site disposal facility. The transportation of the contaminated soil and groundwater will be done by licensed haulers along approved truck routes. And once the excavations are complete, the excavations will be backfilled with clean material. And then ultimately the site will be repaved with, or will be resurfaced with asphalt over the excavation areas that tie into the existing asphalt at the site. Next slide. So the excavation is going to be, the excavation has been planned for a couple of reasons. One, to minimize impacts to the sidewalk and the privacy wall, to get the material out that we need to get out, to minimize odor, and to minimize the amount of time that excavations are open, which there's a direct correlation of how long an excavation is open and how much groundwater can seep into that excavation. And so minimize the time that the excavations are open to minimize the amount of groundwater that has to be managed. So this figure shows that the excavation is going to start with something called slot trenching, and it's really just a big excavator that excavates trenches that are 3 feet wide, and they're 13 feet deep, and they are 7 feet back from the property line. And so the first set of trenches that will be excavated are purple. They're called phase 1 trenches, and they get excavated and backfilled immediately with something called controlled density fill, which is a slurry mix that goes into the excavation. So the excavations are open for a very short amount of time that it is designed to help prevent any instability to the sidewalk and manage groundwater and reduce the amount of time the excavation is open that can create odors. So it'll start with the purple, then it'll come back, those things set up. So the cement slurry sets up for a day, and then the next day you come in and you do the next set of trenches. And you continue in a pattern until the perimeter of the site has been excavated and backfilled. And then once that has been done, the excavation will move to the turquoise in the center of the site. And that's going to be done kind of in 3 phases. The first phase of that is the first 4 feet of the soil will be taken off the top of that area. That soil is basically clean. The contamination is deeper at this site. So that soil will be removed. And then that's expected, I think, to take approximately about a day. And then the next day they'll come in and excavate 1/2 of that area down to 13 feet. And with the hopes that, to be able to backfill on the same day. It may be a day or 2. It's, excavation in the field sometimes encounters some challenges that you don't know, but it's expected to not be more than 2 days. And then once that's backfilled, the other half of the excavation will be excavated. The soil that is going to be excavated is approximately 600 cubic yards, which translates to, I'm not sure how many total trucks it was, 6. So during the slot trenching, it's, and I may have that wrong, and Bruce, you can chime in here because I don't see my notes. Is it 600 cubic yards or 600 tons?
600 cubic yards. So each day of slot trenching, there should be 6 trucks coming in and to haul off the contaminated soil, and 6 trucks bringing in the CDF.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. And then when you get to the larger excavation in the center, approximately 8 to 10 trucks a day of taking out material and an equal amount bringing in the clean fill material.
Correct.
The soil will be direct loaded into trucks. So the trucks will be staged. And Tracy's going to talk a little bit about this, but the trucks will not be staged on site. And they will come onto the site where one at a time, and they will be direct loaded. So meaning the excavator will scoop it out and they will move it straight into the truck. It's not going to be stockpiled on site. And then the trucks will leave, will be tarped and covered and leave. And the excavation is expected to take, the complete excavation and resurfacing is expected to take a little bit less than 2 weeks. Next slide. I'm going to turn this back over to Tracy. Tracy is, I'm going to say this and then she'll repeat it. But Tracy is your point of contact for community, any of your complaints, any of your concerns. My whole team is involved in this and will be involved in it every day, but she will be the point person and help facilitate and direct where communication goes. So Tracy, you want to take it away?
Sure. So thank you, first of all. And Dylan and I gave a lot of thought to this, and we think the 2 things that bother communities the most about excavation projects are odors and truck traffic. So the next slides will really discuss those 2 things. So any plans, any environmental plans that they're doing, they have to have a written plan how they're going to manage soil and groundwater, and Alameda County has to sign off on that. There's also air monitoring that goes on. So that's real-time perimeter air monitoring and reporting. So along the fence line, we'll have air monitors, and there's levels that can't be exceeded. If those levels do get exceeded, they're built with some safety margins inside of them. And we know immediately when they're exceeded, and we take immediate steps to control dust better. And that can be things like foam or tarping, or our best friend is actually water out there. We do expect some odors from here, so we do have an odor management program in place. If you smell any odors, they're typically considered nuisance odors. So they smell and they're bothersome, but they're usually fleeting, and we take care of them quickly. But if you do smell an odor and it's bothering you, I would say call me immediately and we can take steps to up the odor management program. Questions on that? I'm just going to stop there because I know this is important for people. So if you have a question, raise your virtual hand or type it in the box. Okay. And as Dylan said, there's steps that we're taking. So the trenches are usually smaller so that we have more control over those excavations. We keep the soil damp at all times. And we direct load. So the direct load is rather than putting it in a pile and then putting it into the truck, we actually take it directly from the ground and put it right into that truck bed. And then of course, stormwater, if we have any during this work, and it might not happen because this work is actually scheduled for the warmer months, site runoff is controlled. They have those big straw wattles that people see to keep the water on site. And then we have plans if there's severe weather to up our stormwater management or stop work in its entirety. And then probably most important, there's going to be a site signage. That number, my number, cell phone number will be there. It's my actual cell phone number. I do answer it 24/7. And if something's going on, including on the weekends or the evening, if something's untarped or you're uncomfortable, you're welcome to call me at any time. I have a direct line to the property owner and to the contractor, and we'll address it as soon as we possibly can. But that's very quickly. It won't be 24 or 48 hours. It will be in real time. And there is a question. It says, when is the cleanup going to take place? And what's the duration from start to finish? That we have a schedule coming up, so let me get to that. But I just want to say the duration is actually quite short. I think it's just a 2-week cleanup. Isn't that right, Bruce?
Yes.
Yeah, 2-week cleanup. And that would be Monday through Friday, not weekends. Okay, next slide, Ted. Okay, truck management, another thing that drives people crazy when work is being done in their community. So we've thought really thoroughly about this as well. Most importantly, trucks won't be staged on site. So what that means is that trucks won't be sitting on site waiting to be filled and idling. They'll be coming in, getting filled, turning off, getting filled, and then going out, and the next truck will be coming in. So nobody will be queued on the streets idling or waiting and emitting emissions. And then also we talked about the direct loading. So again, they take from the trenches, they go right into the truck bed so that you're not handling the soil more than once. When trucks go out of the site, they're cleaned. So the undercarriages are cleaned and the tires, and they are completely tarped. And then there's also usually a flagger that's going to help them get in and out, especially because there's residential in this area. And then all the drivers are subject to ongoing training. And of course, the city of Oakland has truck management plans that we need to adhere to. So any questions on that? I'd also say we recognize there's a school in the neighborhood, and we'll be checking in with them and making sure that they know what's going on too. Okay, next slide. Okay, communication. So I think you've probably seen, but we'll have a site number up there. We'll have my number on there. We'll also have a number for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I would encourage you to call me because I'm a lot more responsive than they would be, but you're welcome to call whomever you're most comfortable with. I would also say that Alameda County has authority over the environmental cleanup, and there might be other work that's being done that would actually be the city. So you're welcome to call me, and if it's not our work or we don't have authority, I can get you in touch with the right person. And then all of the reports, air monitoring results, all of that are online on the Water Board's GeoTracker database. It's a little bit hard to navigate. So again, you can call me if you want to have help doing that. You just have to be a little bit tech savvy, and then you can get used to it. And we have that link coming up on the next second couple slides. Next slide, John. Okay, so to your question about the schedule, right now, again, we're in the public comment period, so we're hoping we get public comments tonight. If you're interested, you can give them to us tonight at this meeting. We also have the address and such that you can mail them or email them into. We'll be evaluating the plans received, the comments received, maybe tweaking the corrective action plan or again, the cleanup plan a little bit based on those, and thinking it will probably be approved by Alameda County in July. Environmental work would start in August. It's going to take about 2 weeks, start to finish. A work notice will go out five days in advance of that. And if you put your email in the question and answer box, we will email you that notice as well so that you have a heads up before the work starts. And again, there'll be site signage up there. And then communications ongoing. I'm here really to help you get through this, and so happy to be called or work with you in any manner possible. Work starts Monday through Friday, no weekend work, normal business hours. 7 seems a little late. Is that right, Bruce?
We won't go that late.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay. And Tiffany, thank you for your email. We'll make sure that you get, we use that. And the work is conducted, obviously, according to the city of Oakland. And then next slide, John. Okay, and then here's how to provide comments. Again, you can do it at tonight's meeting. I would just ask that you give us your name and first name and last name. And of course, you can email them to Noel, and here's his address. If you want, you can just take a picture of that. And also you can just email them to him. And here is how to get more information, I believe, right, John? There you go. So there's the GeoTracker site. That's the Water Board's website, but Alameda County shares that site, and they put up all the reports on this, including the Corrective Action Management Plan. You can call me if you need help navigating that. If you'd rather just have us send you the plan, I can send you a link or a PDF of that. Noel is the project manager for this, and I'm your community relations contact. That's my cell phone again. You can call me anytime. And of course, there's the property owner, Johnny Browning, who actually owns the site and was responsible for the cleanup. And I think that concludes our presentation. So anything you'd like to say, Dylan, before I open this up for questions and answers?
I just want to say that, you know, this has been a long time in the making. And I'm happy to see it getting to the place that it needs to be with this cleanup, and that cleanup comes with some transient impacts. There is going to be odor. There will be odor. And it's going to be, they're basically called nuisance odors. So, you know, if I personally have pretty sensitive lungs, right? And if I'm around something that makes my lungs not feel very good and it's a nuisance odor, you know, I take measures to protect myself, like I close my windows, and I turn on my air filters if I have them, and I try not to expose myself to it for very long. Not that it causes a human health impact, but it does create discomfort for me, right? So I'm going to encourage you all to take care of yourselves. It's not unusual that you're going to smell them, and in order to get this stuff out of there, we need to do it. But this team is committed and has spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to reduce those impacts so that they are very short term. But again, if you have concerns, please contact Tracy during the remediation, and we will take the measures that we need to take to get this done. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so I'd like to open this up for questions, answers, input, and I am going to, with your permission, I just want to remind people this is being recorded. With your permission, I'd like to promote you to a panelist, all of you, so that we can actually see your faces. So if that is okay with you, I'm going to start with the first person that has their hand up, and that would be Michelle. And I'm pushing the button, so you should be moving over to, there you are, to the other side. So Michelle, we can hear you now, and we can actually probably see you if you have your camera on. Hi.
Hi, my name is Michelle Quinn. I live at 595 62nd Street, which is like one house up from Shattuck Avenue. And I guess one of my main questions is things that are outside, like, you know, laundry, drying, and things like that during this period of time. Is there some or ways to prevent things? I mean, that's one question I have. And then the other one is are there things that you think you might find that, like, are there unknowns here that you'll be looking out for? Thanks.
So laundry, and I'm just going to say also then probably if you have fruits or vegetables, I would think as well, right? Dylan? Okay, Dylan?
Yeah. So Michelle, I would say that I don't think there's unexpected things that we're going to find here. These were pits where the tanks were. I think we pretty well know what's in there. Often, sometimes you find piping you didn't expect, but inside the area of excavation, everything's coming out, right? So it's going to 13 feet. So I don't think there's going to be unknowns there. The tanks were removed. Sometimes you do find tanks that were not removed, but I don't think you're going to see that. Sometimes you find contamination beyond the extent of the excavation that you were planning. But we've worked with the consultant to advance a lot of borings to really predefine that area. So I think it's gonna, and we did that because we don't want to open up the ground and have surprises. We want to get in and out as fast as possible. So I don't anticipate that there's going to be unexpected things found in the ground or contamination found in the ground. As far as what you do in your backyard or around your house, again, I would say, you know, these are really short-term nuisances. The nuisance that you're going to see is potentially dust, which we're hoping you don't see any. There should not be dust leaving the site, but this is, you know, stuff happens. So dust and odor. And so I wouldn't put my laundry out on a day if you dry it, right? I wouldn't put it out on a day they're excavating. But even if you did, I just wouldn't, right? I don't think there's a human health risk. I think I would just like take a little bit of precaution about that. Because you could bring your nice clean sheets back in your house, right? And go and put them on your bed and go to sleep and think, I think I smell diesel in my sheets, right? I would say just like, you know, just try to be a little bit cognizant about not having things. The dust that is going to be generated from here is not a human health risk, and it's not. We're going to take a lot of precautions. This is something that I am a stickler about. If dust is flying off this site, this is going to get shut down, right? So we're really going to try to keep all the impacts on the site, and the things that you need to worry about is just the odor, and you know, close your windows.
Okay, and I would say, Dylan, I'm just going to extend her question just in case people have questions about fruits and vegetables. And I would say the same thing. We're expecting it to contain all of that dust on site. That's why we have those air monitors at the perimeter. Yep. But just be prudent and wash your fruits and vegetables.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Did that answer your question, Michelle? Other questions?
Yep, it did. Thank you so much.
Of course. What about our other two participants? I tried to promote them. They denied me. I'll do it again. Sammy, Tiffany, any questions from you or comments? No? Okay, I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes, and if not, then we can end.
I'm good, thank you, Tracy.
Okay, sure. And I would just say sometimes people don't like to comment on a Zoom or in a meeting. And if that's the case, I encourage you to email Noel, or you can call me and I can transcribe your comments. Or if you think of something you wish you had said, you can always email or call either of us, okay? And it looks like a panelist has their hand up. So I think that's Michelle. But Michelle, I think we answered your question. So. Okay, well then I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have another question.
Oh, perfect. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Maybe this may have been in the paperwork, but how is this being paid for?
Us, all of us in the state of California pay a gasoline tax, and we've been paying it forever. And it funds this, I think the underground storage tank cleanup fund program was established approximately 30 years ago by the State Water Board, and all regulatory oversight costs. And I believe, and in this case, the cleanup costs are being reimbursed. So the responsible party pays for it, and then they get reimbursed by the state, provided that they do all the work and submit all the paperwork that they need to do. So there have been a lot of releases of underground storage tanks, and this program is coming to an end, probably in the next 5 years. They're trying to sunset this program. And so it's a really good thing that this site is getting cleaned up now.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to quickly discuss our next steps. So any comments that we receive, Dylan and Noel will consider those, and then they'll make a decision on the corrective action plan. We will also, any comments that we received, we'll put together a document that's called a response to comments document. If you commented and you gave us your email or a way to contact you, we will send that to you. It will also be uploaded to the GeoTracker site that's right there. And that just responds to comments and lets you know how we considered those in making a final decision for the site. Before work starts, we'll be sending out a work notice. We got your email, we'll email it to you, but we'll be sending it out via good old snail mail. And then of course we have the site signage up there. So you should know when we're starting the work, and included in that work notice will be a schedule. And then also again, a point of contact is should you have any concerns. And last, I'd just like to thank each of you for attending this meeting and let you know that we are available if you have more questions or if you have a neighbor that has a question. This recording will be uploaded to GeoTracker, and that link will be, uploaded to YouTube, and the link will be on GeoTracker. So I think that covers, John, did I cover everything?
I believe so.
Okay, well then on behalf of Dylan and Alameda County Department of Environmental Health, I would like to thank each of you very much for taking time. I know you had other things you could have done tonight, so we really appreciate your interest. And as Dylan said, we're going to do the absolute best job we can to do this work in a manner that is not bothersome to you. But I'm available if you have any questions, okay? All right. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, everybody.